And now there are 3 other sailing YouTube channels against little old sailing into freedom. That's right, the battle of the catamarans continues, and there are surprises galore. Stay tuned. That's right, it's a battle to the death between Delos, Doodles and the Barefoot something or other people. You may think, can Sailing into Freedom deal with 3 other YouTube channels ganging up on him? Of course we can, people. We handle bad situations in this channel. In fact, we make a habit of it. This anchorage is visited by bull sharks, and with me being noisy and flashing lights around, it was only a matter of time until they came and said hello. I have to hand steer this. As the COVID crisis goes pandemic, Cuba closes its borders and kicks us out. We were low on food, fuel and water, but the Cuban military didn't want to hear any of that.
You have to go now!
And they escorted us out into international waters. We sailed to Jamaica, but are refused entry. We next try the Dominican Republic, but they kick us out too. Our only other option is Haiti, but we are forced out of the country and have to exit through reefs and shoals in the middle of the night. I was finally getting the hint. We would have to fend for ourselves on tiny islands in the middle of the Caribbean. Day 62 of our ordeal finds us leaving this tiny island here, going in search of another tiny island in the middle of nowhere so we can hide out again and wait for the world to become normal. I must admit, I still get teary-eyed when I watch that. It wasn't the ordeal. It's the fact that you have someone special and then you lose someone, and that's pretty hard to take. But there you have it. That's life. With respect to the ordeal, I actually enjoyed it. I was never worried at all. The only worry I had was about Margarita being worried. But if it was up to me, I would have been out there for another 2 more months, because coming in at that time, we were very lucky because 2 Spanish boats that came in previously, the day before, they got kicked out. And if you get kicked out of Panama at that time of year, there's very few places to go, and it's all upwind. It's all a slog. So we were very lucky. Yes, we've had our fair share of hard situations. In fact, probably more than our fair share. There's been a couple of comments saying, hey, Blackie, if you didn't have bad luck, you'd have no luck at all. And sometimes it seemed that way. But I'm sure recklessness has factored into it. But the situations arise, you deal with it, and you try to do it in good humour. There's a whole lot more I could mention, but I'll mention one more only, and that's when I got COVID by myself in San Blas off a tiny little island. I deliberately moved the boat so I was away from everyone, because I know the natives come up to you in their canoes, and I didn't want to, get anyone, diseased. And I had 4 oranges and 3 rotten pineapples, and I lived on that for 18 days, and I had a bad case. The first 8 or 9 days, it was like someone had filleted my skin, taken the skin off my back, and there was no comfortable position, and I just lay on the couch, literally for that time, squeezed an orange into my mouth, and literally ate rancid pineapples because I couldn't taste it. In fact, I probably got partially drunk because I'm sure they were rancid to that point. Then on day 9, which I couldn't film, we had a unseasonal storm which blew me onto the reef. And I don't know how, and that was probably one of the few times when I was at that point. There was a point of maybe 5 seconds where I was terrified of losing the boat because I was physically exhausted, because I was still affected by COVID, and it threw me on the reef. It was complete black. There was no reference. The only thing I could, and the chart plotter was at the back, and I had to go forward where the anchor, the windlass controls were. And I'd listen for the waves lapping against the beach, which is what, 200 or 300 meters away. And that was my only reference. And so it was 20 knots blowing me on the reef, and I had to motor forward and then run, bring up a bit of the anchor, run back, wait for it to feather a bit again, listen for the waves, run forward, bring it up. And then there was a point where you bring the anchor up enough where it starts to drag. And of course, the boat just doesn't go backwards, feathered. It actually goes beam on. And that was the point where I was terrified. There was a short period of time, 5 seconds, maybe 10 seconds, when I listened for the waves and I was actually pointing into the reef, and I gunned the motor 600 revs and turned that wheel hard over. And I prayed that I wasn't going to hit that reef. And I don't know how I missed that reef because I was so close, I'm sure. And then I relapsed, so for another 9 days, probably, I don't know, a pineapple half left. I finally got through it. Well, that's sailing into freedom.
Today we're looking at the third ratio on the list, Kelsel's Sailing Performance Number. Just to remind you, I've used these 3 ratios because they can be found on sailboatdata.com, a free website where you can look up data on more than 9,000 boats out there. Here is the XS15 and we can see all the ratios here, so you don't need any maths ability at all. They have done it for you.
So the Kelsel's Sailing Performance Number is just another ratio. It just can give you an indication of boat performance.
Here is the graph I published 2 years ago. Let's add Delos 2.0. My Odisea 48 is close to the top. And next we see Doodles, which is the same as Delos. Now that can't be good. And then we have the Portofinos. And let's shade out the least performing boats.
With respect to the Portofinos, well, we looked at all the numbers over the last few weeks, not much respect there, but let's just say it because it's polite. With respect to the Portofinos, they're clearly in the dark side, no more really to be said about that.
Now this is really suspicious. The Doodles boat website has very little data, just these graphs.
If you believe the Doodles website, it's got a KSP of 0.8. Now, apparently, in 10 knots of wind, you go 10 times 0.8, that's 8 knots. That boat will do 8 knots. What a load of bullshit. Now, Delos 2.0, in my opinion, is clearly in the dark side this time. Remember our sail area to displacement we analysed a couple of weeks ago? It was borderline. And then we looked at the displacement to waterline length, and again it was borderline. So if we take it as a whole, the boat is too heavy. Okay, it would be better to go up, say 4, 5 or 6 feet, and then you can take more toys and take more gear. It's best not to hobble your catamaran because they're breaking the cardinal rule. Catamarans must be light. I also pointed out last week that because the sailboat manufacturers supply the data to sailboatdata.com, you ought to be checking it to see if it sounds about right.
Here is an example. Let's take a look at the leopards from 45 to 50 feet. Leopard 45, the ratio is very low at 18.6. Let's check out the graph. This is a terrible sailing boat. It is underpowered and most of the time it will be motor sailing. Remember, the higher up this graph, the better, and this boat is at the very bottom. The 48 has a ratio of 22.3, better, but still low, and the 50 is about 21, very low again.
Now we all know that leopard catamarans are not known for their performance. These boats are all basically floating palaces. But hang on, let's check out the 46. Wow, that's 30.6. Sounds like the laws of maths and physics have gone out the window. So the 46 is somewhere up around the performance catamarans? I would have thought it's somewhere down there.
There are 2 ways to increase the sail area to displacement ratio. We can obviously increase the sail area or we can decrease the displacement. Okay, so let's check out all the sail areas on all these leopards and draw them on a graph versus waterline length.
Do we see something unusual here? Maybe let's try and draw a line of best fit. That's a big increase in sail area, about 20%. But hang on, they could have increased the sail area by increasing the mast height. So let's check out the mast height versus waterline length. Nope, no big spike in the mast height. In fact, to get that increase in sail area, the mast would have to be somewhere off the graph. Not likely, laws and physics people? Doesn't lie. But as I said before, you could also increase the sail area to displacement ratio by decreasing the displacement.
So let's plot the displacement or weight of the leopards versus waterline length. Something has been done to the weight that has resulted in a 30% decrease that makes a huge difference in the sail area to displacement ratios of 25.9 versus 20.6.
So it appears that they've overstated their sail area and they've understated their displacement. Now, it doesn't mean that that's exactly right. It just begs the question and you need to investigate more. For example, you can ask a person that's had a 46 and ask them how much it actually weighs. Ask them about their sail area. Or, what I like to do, it's a whole lot of fun, is go to a leopard dealer or go to the boat show, go with all my graphs and go, what's this number here for? What's that? Do you understand maths and physics? And then watch them squirm, people. It's better than going to the movies.
Well, maybe not.
The funny thing is, or the sad thing is really, there are sailing YouTube channels out there that are giving advice to their viewers based on sailboatdata.com and they're not checking it. And they really ought to know better, especially when they're sailing the actual damn boat themselves. Now, an example is the O'Kellys. They had a Leopard 46 and he's still adamant and telling people that his sail area to displacement ratio is close to 31. He really ought to know better, and he's telling people, he's advising people on what to look for in boats. What the f-? So he read it in print and he just automatically believed it. Now, that's a whole lot of nonsense. I'm telling you now, don't even believe me. You've got the formulas. I've shown you in other episodes how to work these things out. You can get a screenshot of my episodes with all the graphs. Work out the boat that you're trying to buy or you're interested in buying. Work out all the ratios, stick it on the graph, and then you've got it worked out for yourselves.
Not very hard, Plucky. Oh, come on, darling. There's no time for that. We have some cutting, grinding and welding to film.